Today we'll be discussing The Trail of Lost Hearts with author Tracey Garvis Graves. Click there on. We have one more joining us.
Okay.
Thank you everybody for joining us tonight with author Tracey Garvis Graves. Um, Before we get started, I just wanted to give you like a little introduction. Tracey Garvis Graves has been named a best-selling author by the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today. Her debut novel, On the Island, is in development for a feature film with MGM and Temple Hill Productions. She is the author of 9 other novels, and my personal favorite is The Girl You Used to Know, whose ending left me completely speechless. I was not expecting that at all, and I raved about it and had all my friends reading it at the time.
Oh, I love that.
If you haven't read it, add it to your TBR. This one was just as fabulous. I could not put it down once I got started. We're gonna keep this. Those of you that have been here before know, like, if you have a question, just feel free to chime in. I see we have a new member, so we can all just say like our name and where we're from, so that Tracy has like an idea. For those who don't know me, I'm Michelle. I'm the one that coordinated all of this. You can check out the recording of this broadcast on our website at bellavidastyles.com. We have book clubs every other month where we try to bring authors every now and then and discuss the books with us. So I'll start with Jennifer.
Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer. I'm here. I'm from Miami. I'm a teacher. I teach fifth grade, math and science. I love our book club. I've been a member for a while now, probably a couple years. And I'm so happy to meet you and thank you for joining us. I really enjoyed the book.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy. I'm also from Miami. I'm also a teacher. I love the book. I loved reading it. It was amazing. And I'm so glad to get to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you. Thank you so much, Christy.
Melissa.
Hi, I'm Belissa. I'm from New York originally, but lived in Miami for many, many years. But I'm now based in Denver, Colorado, and I love the book as well. It was amazing. Really
Thank
enjoyed it.
you.
Couldn't put it down. I just wanted to keep reading. So
Thank
thank you.
you. Nice to meet you, and I love your name. That's so pretty.
Thank you.
Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Cohen. I love the book, Tracy. I listened to it. I listened to it on the audiobook just recently, and it really was intriguing, and it really
Oh,
kept me happy on my morning walk.
oh, I love hearing that. Thank you.
And Michelle, who just joined us. We're just doing little intros so that Tracy can get to know our group a little.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
I think you froze.
Can you hear me?
Oops.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
My connection is really bad. Okay. Yeah. I'm like, can you hear me now? Okay. So I'm Michelle. I've known Michelle for many years, and
And she's freezing.
we actually had a book club together that, hold on, let me move.
Sorry about that.
Let's see this.
Okay, I'll give her a second before we start the questions.
All right. Is it better here, maybe?
Yes.
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay, this connection is better. So, I'm Michelle. I've known Michelle for many years. We had a book club together in college, and then life happened, and we kind of lost track of that. And then she started this one, and so I rejoined with her. But I love reading, and that's it.
Well, it's nice to meet you. It's nice to meet everyone. Jennifer, I don't think I specifically said it was nice to meet you, but it's nice to meet all of you and to hear a little bit about you. Do you want me to talk about where I am and anything about me? Or
Sure.
do you guys already know that I'm in Des Moines, Iowa?
No, you can tell
That's
us a little bit.
Yeah, so I live in Des Moines, Iowa. It's very rainy here tonight. It's a little cool and kind of a dreary evening, as I can see it right outside my window. I've been in Iowa my whole life. I've always lived in Des Moines. So at some point in time, there are other places of the country that I'd like to go to, but this is where where my family ended up, and this is where I've been ever since. So, but Iowa has really good reading and writing programs, and we have a really good MFA program at the University of Iowa. So Iowa is kind of known for writing because of the MFA program. People come from all over the world to go to it. So I'm trying to make Iowa seem a little cooler.
That's very
But
cool.
if you're an Iowa writer, this is a great place.
That's very cool. I'm a journalist by training, and Miami is not really the best place for that. So,
Yeah, well, we do have the university, like I said, the MFA program here is pretty renowned. So, and I actually did go to the University of Iowa. I graduated from a different college, but I did my first 2 years at the University of Iowa, and I had one of my professors was somebody that was in the MFA program. And I have a business degree, strangely, but she was the teacher. I took a couple of fiction electives and wish I would have stuck with it and maybe majored in it, but I got a business degree that I never really used. But I have it, and my dad said I would never regret it, and he's right. I have it, but I just fiction has always had my heart.
nice. Maybe it helps you sell some books having that background.
It helps me kind of with the business end of it because publishing is still a business, so it does help a little bit with that kind of stuff. So
Before we dive into this particular story, can you tell us a little bit about your writing process and how long it took you to get from like concept to publishing for this novel?
yeah, so usually when I write a book, I give myself a year, and that encompasses everything from initial idea, kind of going through what I call a zero draft or a vomit draft, where I'm just kind of really just getting everything I need to know about the story in one place. Um, and usually my entire process can take up to a year for all of that. So I come up with the concept or the idea, I reject it for a while to see if it grows stronger or if it goes away. And then I start with kind of my zero draft. And then when I have enough to come up with a roadmap for myself, writers fall into two camps known as plotters and pantsers. So I'm a plotter. I like to plot. I like to know where I'm going. So I write my own roadmap. But pantsers sit down at their computers and just write by the seat of their pants. And pantsers think that they get their best creativity from that method, whereas plotters think we get our creativity from our method. And the honest answer is that whatever method works best for the writer is the one that they have to use. So I'm a plotter. I like to know the general beginning, middle, and end. And that only happens after I've vetted the idea to see if it will withhold a premise that's going to have to stretch out 300 pages. Because that's the hardest thing about what do I want to write about? I need an idea that's big enough to support an entire arc where not only the characters individually, the characters together, and then the plot itself. So my process starts with me trying to vet an idea and make it go away. And if it goes away pretty easily, then I know it was probably half baked and maybe not something that I should think about. But if I can't get it out of my head, that's the one that I start to drill down into. So once I've drilled down into it and I'm into that kind of zero draft, that I can stay in that space for a while. I mean, I can stay in that space for a couple of months, just learning about the story because the story is so the depth I'll have to go into with the story is going to require for me to start thinking about subplots and themes and how everything will tie together. So by the time I've got all of that done and I start out with my draft, that's the part that is probably my least favorite about writing a book because despite the fact that I've written a roadmap for myself, now when I start following it, that's when a lot of the major creativity comes in because, okay, I know approximately in this scene, I want the character to do X, Y, Z. And at the end of this scene, I want this to be set up for this. That's the hardest part. That's the part that will sometimes leave me frustrated after a writing day. As I keep going through that process, I just keep revising and adding and revising and adding until I get to the point where it's all there. Everything's in the right place. It's where I want to have it. The arcs are all doing what they're supposed to do. And then I just keep writing and polishing and revising and polishing. And I send it out for feedback. I've got trusted readers. I might share it with my agent or someone on my publishing team. And then after all of that, it still might not be a book because that's the point where the publisher might be like, well, when you started writing it, that was really trendy, but the trends have shifted and that's not going to work anymore. So that's always there at the end of the process that takes a year that you might find out that that's not going to work. So that's kind of how the process works for me. I just keep drilling down into an idea until I can't discount it any longer. And then I start writing the idea and going back up this way and kind of taking that zero draft and expanding it until it's a book. And I've done that with every book. I've never switched my process. I always think that maybe I'll switch it or maybe I'll tweak it. And even if I do, it's still the same exact process at the end every single time.
You have your formula down.
I do. I kind of have my different sections of the process that I know I'm in. And you can break it down to about 5. And, concept of the idea, vetting the idea, solidifying the idea, executing the idea, and then finding out if it's going to be bad news or good news. But that's the life cycle of the book.
Do you have a favorite place or time of day to write?
Well, I write on my couch. I have a nice little desk right back there with a really comfy desk chair, and I don't sit in it because it's not comfortable at all. It's not the right, I can't get my ergonomics correct. I have a kitchen island, and it's not quite right there. So I write on my couch with a laptop desk, and that's not ergonomically intelligent at all. And I have a lot of aches and pains, but it's the place where I feel the most comfortable. So I just make it work.
For The Trail of Lost Hearts, where did you get the idea of the story from?
So the seed of the idea was kind of bonkers. I had it in my head when how I talked about the seed of the idea and then I have to vet it and decide if it's strong enough or not. The Trail of Lost Hearts appeared in my brain as an idea about writing a heist novel. So I had this idea that would be really fun to have the hero and the heroine of the story not realize that they were both working on stealing the same thing. And I hadn't really gotten to the point of deciding whether it was going to be a piece of art or a painting or just something that these two rivals both wanted to take. And then I was thinking about, how they could have these like near encounters and he got there first and then she got there first. And as I was in that vetting process, I realized that I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to write a heist novel. I don't know how to write going into a heavily armed and guarded place. And, if I have the idea, then I have to execute it. And I realized I can't do this. And I was really sad because sometimes you get in your head. Well, not sometimes, every time authors get an idea in their head and then we try to figure out if it'll work. And then I hit that wall and I was just like, oh, but I really want to do something with this. I really want to have some kind of competition where they're looking for something. They're both looking for something. And I landed on geocaching because I was like, well, wait a minute. Maybe they're both looking for it. So then I envision it as sort of a competition between these two geocachers because geocaching has, they will run contests within a geocaching framework. Like there will be badges or things that you can collect if you found so many caches, they have like contests or challenges, I think they call them. So I was like, well, maybe they could do that. And from that, it further distilled down to what you read. So that became just the vehicle to bring them together. It was their meet cute, which wasn't cute at all because you know what happened to them. I mean, luckily it didn't happen because Marshall intervened, but so that's how crazy that's what this book started out as, the seed of an idea about two rivals in a heist novel. And now it's what you read. And if you tried to follow the roadmap, you'd be like, what, how? But
it's funny.
Oh God, no.
It's funny you mentioned geocaching because it's one of my questions later on, like how did that idea come to be? I really didn't know what that was. At first, I thought it was that trendy thing that was happening during the pandemic that people would go find like little virtual figures on their phone.
Oh, like Pokemon Go.
Yeah, that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as I kept reading, I was like, okay, this is not that. So I had never heard of geocaching.
Well, now you know why I chose it because it didn't start out that way. I was like, I am going to figure out something that they can find. And then obviously, that that part of the story really didn't end up being part of the main story at all, because as I got into it, I mean, all of the framework, once I realized that geocaching was the vehicle by which to bring them together, I had to go back to that zero draft. And it's funny, if you read the zero draft, it starts out with all this heist stuff. And I would even like Google like the Hope Diamond, has anybody tried to steal that? Stuff like that. And then as you go on in this draft, all of a sudden the geocaching word starts to show up. So I can look back on it later and just be like, wow, what was I thinking? That was so dumb. That wouldn't have worked at all. But then I followed the draft and I'm like, well, that's where it took me. So that's how the geocaching thing came about. That story came about because I just couldn't figure out the problem that I wanted to solve. So I had to come up with something different.
How much research goes into your writing?
A ton. I mean, I do a ton of research, even for The Girl Who Used to Know, which was your favorite, Michelle.
Love
A
that.
ton of research for that. Has anybody read On the Island, my debut novel? No? Okay,
No, but now I want to because I know it's
you
going to be
have to
tricky.
check out On the Island. On the Island is the oh, sorry, I just dropped my phone on my chessboard. My chessboard's right. On the Island is bonkers. It's bonkers. It's about a woman who's a teacher and she's been hired for the summer to be the tutor of a student who had cancer and has made a recovery. He's a 16-year-old student, and his family has hired the teacher to tutor him over the summer to get him caught back up with their class. But they're going to spend the summer in the Maldives. It's a pretty wealthy family, and they're going to take it. They're just going to go there for the summer. So the teacher and the student are flying separately, and their plane crashes on the way. And they spend almost 4 years on an island together.
Oh,
So, yeah.
that's very very different.
Yeah, it is. It's going to sound really bonkers. It's my bestseller to date. It's the one that put me on the New York Times bestseller list. It's definitely you'll go into it with raised eyebrows and maybe not have raised eyebrows by the end. But that book is where I discovered my love of research, because I had never been to the Maldives ever. And I set the whole book there. So I've done everything. And I do this with every book now. I look at things like, what are the high and low temperatures? What months does that occur? For the Maldives, what kind of flora and fauna? Everything, anything you could possibly think of. Where is it? I used a real life event. So something that happened in real life is in this book.
And in The Girl You
But
Used to Know too.
yeah, and The Girl He Used to Know. Incidentally, On the Island and The Girl He Used to Know are two of my books that use a major historical event, something that happened in our history that you'll all recognize.
I did not
So
see that
that's
coming at all.
what's that?
In The Girl Who Used to Know, I did not see that connection coming.
That's what everybody says. They're like, when I saw the date, I was like, oh no, I saw that date. I hadn't been paying attention. So spoilers, I don't want to spoil anything else,
Oh,
but definitely check out The Girl He Used to Know. But check out On the Island. You might be surprised. It is, it's the book that I taught myself how to write a book with. That's my date. That's the first book I ever wrote, is On the Island. And the prose is very simple. So keep that in mind. I had never done it before. But the story is one of my favorites.
I read it's going to be a movie. Is there an expected date for that? Or it's
Well, the option with MGM expired, and then Netflix picked it up, and then their option has expired now too. So I actually have the rights back with me, and On the Island would make a fantastic movie because it's very visual. Everything in that book is completely visual. There's very little interior dialogue. It's all plot. It's what they're on. I mean, they are on this island fighting for survival. They have to figure everything out. And it's just the two of them, a 30-year-old school teacher and a 16-year-old kid. So that was a lot of research. So that really did. But I research every book really heavily. For The Trail of Lost Hearts, I mentioned something in there, when Ren eats those blackberries that are on the trail. I took that from TripAdvisor. I went out to TripAdvisor and pulled up this actual hiking trail that she meets Marshall on in the beginning of the book. And then I read reviews of people that hike that trail, and somebody had mentioned the blackberries. And that's how I knew that there were blackberries and I could use that.
Oh.
So TripAdvisor was really good for this book. I did a ton of research with TripAdvisor. I would read people's experiences of hiking where Marshall had described how there's power lines and there's llama. That's a real place.
Oh.
So I always research those places and just make sure, and things that you don't even think about, like time changes and and I missed a major detail that luckily we corrected before it went to print. But you've read The Trail of Lost Hearts, so the gas station is a pivotal place where Marshall's brother and Marshall is all wrapped up in his grief of what happens. But people in Oregon, unless you live in the outer lying areas, don't pump their own gas.
Yeah, I was like, what time is this
But the
set when
law
I
went
first
into
read that?
effect over the summer. The law went into effect that you can now. And I missed that on the first go around because one of my author friends who read the manuscript lives in Oregon and she didn't say anything. So I texted her and I was like, what? What about law? And she's like, well, that's just for like Portland proper. Everybody else in Oregon that's not right in a city can pump their own gas. And I was like, okay, well, and then somebody read an arc and they're like, well, you can't pump your own gas. And I was devastated. And then my team was like, it's okay. We'll just fix it. You're not expected to know all the legislation of every, but I didn't know it, guys. I missed it. And that really bothered me. So I do my best, but I'm not always going to catch it. And the copy editor didn't catch it. I mean, it was just one of those things if you don't know. So research is something, and I'm a stickler for it. When I read a book and I think, well, I know that's not right, even without Googling, then I know that maybe the book didn't have as much care taken toward the research. It is really important to me.
I mean, it's evident in your writing because it flows so beautifully and your descriptions like make you feel, at least for me, like you're there. And I don't know how many different lines I highlighted in the book because the writing was just so beautiful.
There were some things that Marshall said, and making his character a psychologist really gave me gave me a leg up. It did, because he's such a wise person and he has he's so emotionally mature, and which obviously goes hand in hand with his profession and the fact that he's the book hero. So I wanted him to have a really good emotional intelligence and maturity, and he does. But that's just some of those lines that I think that maybe you've highlighted probably were because of Marshall and Ren and the type of people they were. They did a lot of soul searching and they made a lot of discoveries on that trail, so to speak. I mean, they learned a lot of things.
Are any of your characters based on real people? Because to me, they all seemed so relatable.
No, but I will say that I tend to write novels that have a lot of realism in them, or characters who act realistically, and that has not always worked to my benefit. I consider myself a contemporary fiction writer, and my tagline is contemporary fiction with a happily ever after. I like to take the smart, meaningful elements of a woman's journey and combine them with the swoony hero that's not the cause of her happiness. He's the icing on the cake. He's the reward that runs along kind of concurrently in the background. And he's important, but what she's trying to accomplish is important. But I want to have heroes that are a really good complement to what the heroine is trying to do. So that's kind of how I want to craft all of my books. But a lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes readers don't want that. It's too realistic. But I like that because when I'm reading a book and it starts to seem like it's not realistic, or people don't act like I would think that they would normally act within the framework of a story like The Trail of Lost Hearts. Like I had one reader that was really one early reader, one of my beta readers, and we laugh about it now, but she was really pushing me she's like, but it's not very romantic and I'm not really getting butterflies. And I'm like, because the story doesn't support that. Look at where Ren's coming from. But I battle that all the time. It's, you know, readers want something that doesn't dovetail with the story, and I'm going to stick with it. I know that the romance being earlier or being more of the focus would probably have sold more copies, but it wouldn't have rung true to me. So that's what I try to do with all of my books, is to find that realism. How do characters really act, and how would they really act in this situation?
I'm gonna skip ahead because you touched on the romance because that was one of my questions for later on in the discussion. But I loved how Marshall and the Ren love story developed. It wasn't just like a quick falling in love story like you usually expect in a lot of rom-coms and women's fiction novels. There were complexities to it, especially the amount of time it took him to come around and accept
Yeah.
the baby and accept her. I thought that was so realistic to real life that you don't see that in a lot of novels. I feel like you didn't rush them to like
Yeah.
fall in love together. Even even before the baby and like on the hiking trip.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you approached writing the love story?
So one of the things that I grappled with was the fact that Ren was pregnant and discovering this after she got home. And the reason I made Ren walk away from Marshall and explain to him, I mean, he didn't owe her anything. He didn't have to open up or anything like that. He didn't have to tell her about his brother or the circumstances. And it was obviously very hard for him, which I think is funny because even a man who's a psychologist still doesn't want to talk about things. And he doesn't. He didn't want to talk about it. Maybe because he just wasn't ready, like he told her later. But for Ren, it was important that she be true to herself. I told myself I would never leave an unchecked box again. This is an unchecked box. We've only known each other for a week. We had a great connection, but I'm going to step away now, even though I don't want to. So then when she goes back and she discovers that she's pregnant, not thinking that she'll ever hear from him again, and then he comes back into the picture. So I wanted to drill down on, okay, how would you handle this if you were Ren? What would you do? So she's a little bit nervous. She doesn't want to tell him now because now she's got the hot feet. She's the one that's, like, oh, ooh, okay. Now I'm the one that has to divulge something. And now I don't want to because I might lose you. But I don't know if I pulled it off successfully, but I wanted to show a parallel that maybe Ren could use it as a tiny little bit of a kernel of insight into how Rob was thinking. And with that realization that she was also keeping something from someone that she cared about, maybe she could find some forgiveness because she has his child. That's gonna poison her. That's how I wanted it to read, that if she didn't have that forgiveness and that awareness that, okay, I am doing the same thing. Rob kept this because he wanted to keep things going. I want to keep things going with Marshall. Marshall wanted to keep things going, but didn't want, I mean, everybody had their own agenda. And so that's how I worked it out. And then when she has the baby, she looks down at that baby and she realizes that I don't care anymore. I'm going to tell you because you can decide to stay or go, and that's fine. And maybe she should have told him earlier. Maybe how she did it was fine, but that's how I chose to do it. And then, and with her telling him, just, take your time, you think about it too, because now they both have their information. So I don't know. That's how it worked out in my head. And I thought that made the most sense to me. And it's not that my characters always do what I would do. But I thought that made sense for the story.
Since we're on the topic of Ren and Marshall's love story, I don't mean to get into like a pro-life, pro-choice debate, but in the novel, I was so surprised when Ren found out that she was pregnant and then kept the baby after all that Rob put her through.
Yeah.
I mean, she was so devastated, and it was like such a deceit that I was surprised that she would keep it after all of that, and how she was like starting her life all over and had all these
Yep.
plans. So what was the thought, like what was the process for you to come to that decision? Like, did you always plan for her to keep it, or did things change along?
Yes, I did. And my views, and her view, I mean, that's just what happened within this framework of the story, because she had already talked to her doctor about freezing her eggs and she wanted to be a mother. And so I had to make the decision like, okay. And somebody developmental editor that I respect said, well, because I said, she doesn't have to be pregnant. I don't have to do that at all, but I really want to, because I want to create a situation where something that she wants, she can still have. And of course, it's her baby too. It's not just Rob. So of course, she's just thinking of it that way. But I was thinking to myself, I don't know. And she's like, but you have a crucible. And I was like, I don't know what that means in fiction. I know what a crucible is, but I don't know what you mean. And she's like, she wants something. She's trying to run from something. She's trying to run, literally run from Rob's presence and his ghost. She's trying to outrun it. And she can't outrun it now. She has the baby. She's like, don't you dare. She's like, use that. She's like, you have all of this really good material then to mine and to think about how it would help, what's that going to do for the framework of the story? She's like, you've put the character in about the worst position you can put her in. Don't make it easier on her. So I didn't. So I left it that way. Whereas, she's decided that, okay, this is how it is. What am I going to do with this? Am I going to cherish this baby because I wanted one? And I've, talked to my doctor about it. I'm getting older, and then I'm just going to figure it out. And obviously she is very excited about, her daughter. Her daughter makes a lot of, it's just something that she cherishes. So I guess if I was going to make the decision for her to not have kept the baby, she just wouldn't have been pregnant at all. That's probably how I would have done it. I'm glad I personally am glad she kept the baby, but I'm pro-choice. I would have been happy with whatever she chose because that was her choice. And I did get a little bit nervous about having a baby. And I saw some people saying, oh, I don't like the secret baby trope, but it's not the secret baby trope. It's not the hero's baby. But that's, again, when you write in contemporary fiction like I do, sometimes things get looked at through the lens of a romance or a romance trope and through the lens of contemporary fiction or women's fiction. And this just what happened in the story.
And I mean, being that it came out like last month, and I know you were writing it for a year or more, but the state of the world now, it was like, it was interesting. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I mean, I'm pro-life, and I liked it, but
I mean, I didn't ever have any intention of her not keeping that baby, nor would I have ever had her choose an abortion in a book that I wrote. That wouldn't have touched that with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't do it.
Jennifer looks like she has a question. You're on mute though.
Yeah, I had a question. I wanted to know your thought process about giving the baby Rob's last name and the connection to the step children and that whole thought process, why you chose that.
I really liked that part. That was my editor's favorite chapter, the one where she goes to visit Shayla.
So powerful.
I feel very strongly that every person should have their own identity. And Birdie has two parents, and she has all those branches on her family tree. And so and this is where my love of women's fiction or the heroine's journey trumps the romance angle. The heroine's journey will always be the most important part to me, and the romance is secondary. I was so excited to write that scene where she went to talk to Shayla because I felt like it was very smart of Wren. She wanted to make sure that her daughter had family, had roots, and could understand where she came from. And I don't think anybody should ever be ashamed of that. And I don't think that, and obviously Wren felt that way about Birdie and didn't ever want her. She wanted her to know. And I love the fact that maybe someday she and Shayla will have some sort of relationship, and Birdie will get to know her cousins, because despite what happened with Birdie's father and the devastating effect that it had on two separate women and two separate families, it's still, at the end of the day, if something were to happen to Wren, Birdie might want to go looking for family someday. And maybe she and those cousins, maybe they'd be like, wow, this is a really weird thing that happened, but maybe they'll end up having a relationship someday. So I wanted to pull in that family and show that a man's betrayal didn't have to continue to have a knockdown effect on these people, these children, and these two women who had no idea that it was happening. So does that answer that, Jennifer? Or is there anything else that you want? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I just don't know if I would have been strong enough to, do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have said that. They're like, I don't know, but I think if it's your child and you're the parent, and Wren did not do anything wrong. Wren was, and neither did Shayla. Shayla and Wren were completely without, fault. They didn't do it, but they sure have to suffer the consequences and have to, especially Shayla's children, those two little children. So, and I thought that I wanted to write a scene and chapter, I guess a whole chapter. I wanted to write a whole chapter where women could actually start out very adversarial, and through both of them compromising. Obviously, Wren went in more eager for this meeting than Shayla, but I really wanted to see two women reach a hard-won truce by the end of their conversation, and I think that happened.
I think it goes back to like your writing being so relatable. Like you didn't have Shayla respond in the first email that she sent out. She
Mhm.
did open the door in a friendly manner. I think that that whole scene was so powerful, and I personally like to pick books for us to read that showcase strong women.
Mhm.
And a lot of love stories sometimes show the women in a weaker manner, like accepting everything the man did, or if they're betrayed, like it off tracks their life forever and they spiral. And I
Mhm.
think this book was like the complete opposite of that.
Yep.
Instead of everything that happened to her like tearing her down, it like empowered her to be more than what she was before. Like I thought that was
Yes.
such a beautiful message.
And part of the scene with Shayla was Ren coming into her power. I mean, she's been broken down by this experience, and it just keeps getting worse. But when she goes to see Shayla, that's when she's decided that, okay, this is what path opened up for me in my life, but I'm going to walk down it in the way that I want to walk down it. So I appreciate that so much, Michelle, because that is what I want to do with all of my writing. I want to write it in an unexpected way, because I think a lot of people would have expected uh, Shayla and Ren for them not to have reached the point where they reached. And it's never made sense to me where the wife gets mad at the other woman when the other woman didn't know she was the other woman. So it didn't make sense. People are like, oh, if I was Shayla, I would have just like kicked her in the teeth. And it's like,
But she didn't
but
know.
is that realistic? I mean, let's break it down. Let's give it some more nuance. Can we go a little deeper? And so yeah, I don't like that kind of hair trigger, knee jerk, oh, she's gonna be, and I mean, Shayla reacted, I think, realistically, for anyone that opens a door and finds the woman her husband was having an affair with and a baby, which I'm sure was, it just
Yeah.
made this poor woman, Shayla, just be like, oh my gosh, it's just getting worse. So they started at a very hard part of this revelation and were able to get to a point where, and Shayla's a mother. And I mean, she's got her two children. So I think, I'm a mother. I tried to tie in how universal we would feel as mothers and women, and want to maybe help another woman when looking at all of the evidence, so to speak.
And it's not like Ren knew that she was the mistress knowingly having an affair. Like she was building her happily ever after.
Yeah, she had no idea. She thought that she and Rob, although, she wasn't perfectly happy, which I think is also realistic with women sometimes, because sometimes we tell ourselves we are, and then afterwards we're like, wait a minute, I'd like to change this. And so, she just kind of she kind of started out at the beginning of the book, she's really doubting her intelligence because she feels so stupid and so duped. How did I not know this? How could this be the way I was? And so that it's her coming back into her power and her confidence again, knowing that, no, I can trust the decisions I make for my own life.
I also, now that we're on the topic of Shayla, really liked how her marriage to Rob was described. Like it wasn't like he had an affair because things were crumbling and he was getting back at her. Like life was normal for them and it just happened.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a guy who's traveling a lot that maybe, isn't home as much as he might otherwise be, and things kind of happen. And yeah, I didn't really want there to be a big problem in their marriage. It's just kind of wanted to show that, they've got a couple kids, they've been together a while, and sometimes when marriages aren't as strong as they maybe need to be, things start to kind of break down a little bit. So I didn't want any clear cut, like mustache twirling villains. I wanted everything to be sort of like, well, I could see how maybe that happened. But at the end of the day, I try my best. And then once it's out there in the world, I just let it go, and I have to move on to the next one and try again.
Back to the relatable characters.
Yeah.
For me, even the side characters like Ren's group of friends were so relatable, and her story with Steph was like such a beautiful like friendship love story also in the book. Um, how is there a character that you identified with the most while writing these characters?
Not really. I mean, I identified with all of them in a way because I spend so much time with them, and when I'm trying to figure out what they're going to do and say and how they're going to act, they feel like real people, like three-dimensional real people, and that can get kind of crazy because I have to remind myself that they are not real people. Um, this one I felt like I was just kind of all of the characters. I didn't really feel like I resonated strongly with, any particular character. I did love Ren and Stephanie's back and forth, and they're kind of,
I have a
re-
Stephanie.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly like
Well,
that. I
Stephanie
think we
is
all
my,
do.
yeah, everybody has a Stephanie, and that Stephanie is actually my social media assistant. I told her that I would use her name, and her husband's name is James. So
Oh,
that story about that's Stephanie's husband is James. So I did use that. Um, it, I also wanted the character of Stephanie to kind of point out to Ren that you're not in a rom-com after all. You're in a romantic dramedy, which I don't even think it necessarily qualifies as a romantic dramedy, but yeah, the best friend character can often impart wisdom or give information that the main character can't. So I think Steph did a good job of that. The character did what I needed it to do.
again, with your strong characters, I feel like the best friend is always like funny and like silly and not
Yeah.
as she was or as supportive as she was. And that was like another, for me, like strong female character in the book.
And Marshall's sister. I
Yes.
like the fact that Marshall's sister said, it takes a lot for a woman to help heal a heart she didn't break. And then she's like, well, it takes a lot for a man to raise a child they didn't make. And I like the fact that this woman sat down next to, when I was writing the scenes about with Marshall's family and Bren being nervous about what they think of her, like, this is my girlfriend who was dating a guy who she didn't know was married. And, gets kind of Jerry Springer-ish. And so I wanted that scene. The sister of the guy that you date or marry or what have you is always a pivotal relationship. So I kind of wanted to set the tone with Marshall's sister right away to let Ren know and the reader know that it's going to be okay. She's going to be okay within the framework of this family.
Did you have a purpose you wanted to fulfill when writing the story?
I think my purpose with my books is always the same. I want to tell a story about a strong heroine who might be going through a really hard time, but through her own kindness and intelligence and ability to figure things out on her own and her strength. I want all of that to be in everything that I write. That's just a big part of it. I just want it to be a strong female character that has something that women can relate to that makes them want to connect with the story she's telling. But I always do want to keep that emphasis on just keeping it's fiction, okay? So everything that's fiction, it's not real, but I want the story to try to hew as close to reality as I can get it without making the readers go like, okay, this is boring. I need a little razzle dazzle here. So
Speaking of razzle dazzle, I love how your words just flow into the next question. Your love scenes were very hot, but also classy. Like I loved that the scene on the trail didn't go all the way and like
yeah.
stopped. I love that it was like very paced and
Mhm.
open door, but still a little bit closed door. In your
They'd
description.
be more closed door if it were up to me. I am always asked to make them hotter, and I always cringe. But thank you for saying they're classy, because that's my big concern. I never want to write anything that's just or that doesn't fit. Like when I like my stuff, my social media system, I'm like, that doesn't fit. That's not gonna work.
But like
She's
this,
not thinking about that.
like the scene in the trail, when it started, I was like, oh no, they're having sex already. Like, I mean, I wanted them to be together, but I didn't want like it to be like that. And then when
Yeah.
it stopped, I was like, oh, good. Like, there's more to them.
Yes,
Can,
absolutely.
can you tell us a little bit about how writing those scenes are for you? Because I would not be able to.
Well, they're action scenes, so they are choreographed, so to speak. I have my own little author pet peeves. Like I personally am not going to be using any euphemisms for any anatomy or things like that. There's a blowjob in this one, and my editor was like, "Could you make it a little hotter?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Do you want a blowjob?" Yeah. And I was like, well, I was kidding, but okay. I don't know. I mean, I try to keep them so they're not super graphic, and sex scenes are good because if you can have some sort of conversation or some sort of verbal thing that can kind of like, maybe something they've never said to each other before or something. If you can do something with the scene where it's not just meant to titillate, because those scenes are not really meant to do that. They're meant to show a deepening of the arc of the relationship. And within the framework of the Trail of Lost Hearts, I decided to turn it into a quest for fun. With Ren wants to have some fun. Steph's like, go out there and have some fun. You've had a really bad year, and so if I had my way, there probably wouldn't have been anything between them, but that's not how this works. So I put in what I think needs to be there, and there are always going to be people that think it's too much and people that think it's not enough. And I just I can't please everyone. So I just try to make it make sense within the framework of the story. If they had gotten together sooner or done anything, that wouldn't have, in my opinion, worked within the framework of the story. So it's a balancing act with every single book.
I think it was enough to make it like entertaining, but not like kill the relationship or make it like gross.
Yeah. I probably would have had one less scene if it were up to me, but the thing is, I don't personally want to go to writing straight women's fiction where there is no romantic relationship because I have to have that. I am such a romance lover, but my love of romance is different than maybe what some hardcore romance readers want. Like for me, I want a love story. I want the nuance. I want to feel the tension. I want to start to think to myself, wait, is something happening? I want you to make me work for it. I love the subtle little, oh, I think something might be happening here. When it's too much in your face, that doesn't really work for me. So I just try to do what I can that how to please myself as a reader, and then how to please the readers of my book, and then how to make that work within the framework of being a writer. They're hard scenes. I don't love my 8th grade English teacher has to tell me with every book, just got done with your book. And all I could think about was, that's great, Mr. Donahue. I'm great. Did you like these sex scenes? Did you like them? Good. And also, you guys, my dad has been forbidden. Forbidden. And they're not even, I don't even write. I don't think I'm a particularly spicy writer, but my dad has been forbidden.
Yeah.
And we have an agreement. My stepmom will be like, why don't you read this first chapter of this new one so you can see the book? And then he reads it, first the chapter. That's really good, Trace.
Just have him skip some chapters.
Yeah. But it is weird, you guys. Everybody I've ever met in my entire life thinks that's how I mean, and my sex scenes, they're all different because they're all depending upon what is, but I've had people come up to me and like target me at parties that I know and be like, so we were wondering, is that something that you've done? And it's like, what? You've never read a book?
A little personal.
Like, they're not about me. These are not about me. I'm not in the book. So it's just it is what it is. And I just try to pretend that it's not happening and that people that I know aren't reading them.
Will there be more of Ren and Marshall? Is there a sequel or another book they might appear in?
No, I would love to do more with Ren and Marshall. The problem is I don't really have enough story to do anything with it. I get that question. I get it with The Girl He Used to Know, which, Michelle, I did have a double epilogue for The Girl He Used to Know that I didn't get to put in the book.
Why?
That I don't know why. Because I don't know why. Because it was 10 years into the future, and it let you know what Jonathan and Annika were up to.
Oh, I would love that.
And their daughters.
Oh, I love
So
that.
I didn't get to do that because I don't know why. They felt the book ends kind of abruptly because they chopped off my epilogues. One was written from Jonathan's point of view and one was written from Annika's.
Oh.
Yeah. So where the sequel question comes in, and I get it a lot. If people connect with a book, then they always want to know if there's more. But the problem is that everything that made you like the book, all that conflict, I don't have it anymore. Because I get that with On the Island all the time. I mean, constantly to this day. That book came out in 2011. They're like, is there not going to be a sequel? And I'm like, no, absolutely. Especially that book. I mean, we're talking, this was a desert island book. There is no sequel to that. So, no, there isn't really anything that I could do with Ren and Marshall, but I will tell you that they're very happy and that everything is going great with them. And I mean, I haven't written this, but Ren now lives in the Pacific Northwest, and she and Birdie live with Marshall. And I don't know if they're married or if they have children, but they're happy as can be for now.
Um, does anybody, everybody's been very quiet. Do you guys have any questions, any comments?
Yeah, I have a question. Have you ever gone geocaching after you
I
wrote this?
have.
Yes.
Yes. So, well, yeah, while I was writing the book, I had the app. And so I would go out. I did urban geocaching, and I lived in downtown Des Moines in a like a walkable neighborhood. I live in a condo, so when I walk out, I'm just right in the downtown area. And so I used my geocache app, and I had my AirPods in, and it
Wow.
took me, and it was graffiti on the side of this building in downtown Des Moines. That's really cool. And I didn't know that's what we were heading toward, and I walked by it all the time. But through the clues, that's where it took me. And I was like,
Oh,
this is
wow.
cool. And then my friends were supposed to be doing some hiking geocaching here any day now, but that has not happened yet. So
Cool.
yeah, it's a
All
cool,
right.
it's a
Yeah.
cool hobby.
I've never done it. I have a friend who took his son to do a geocaching, but it was a really bad experience. And the prize, I guess if you call it or whatever, was in front of like a guy's house. And he says that the guy kind of was just sitting there staring, waiting for people to come and get the geocache. And so after that, he was like, okay, never again, new hobby.
Oh
So
yeah, that would be creepy. So
yeah.
obviously that was, you know how in the book they joke about muggles, about
Yes.
not, they don't talk, geocachers don't really say what they're doing. So I can just see them all like wanting to go find this geocache and some guy just watching,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that would kill the vibe because it's very much, you're looking for it. You're not, it's a solitary endeavor. You're using your clues and your GPS. So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, it's fun. But I had the premium app because all of the geocaches that Ren and Marshall did in that book are real.
Oh,
Those are
wow.
real geocaches that I found. That goes back to the research question, Michelle, that you had asked earlier. So every geocache that they did was an actual geocache. It might not have been in where they were in Oregon, but I found the geocache so that I would be able to use the instructions, to be able to see the commands and where they were going. So those are all real. And then I would just tweak them to match whatever I needed for the story.
That's cool. And then the other, it's just a comment. I can't believe people come up to you and actually ask you like if you've done these things in your book. I think that's just crazy. It's mortifying. It's crazy. I never thought
It was
about that.
weird. It was really
Yeah.
weird. It was, they
Wow.
were some family members of one of my good friends. So it wasn't
Yeah.
like a stranger, but it was
Yeah.
almost weirder because I know them and they
I
were
was
like,
gonna say that's worse. I
I
feel
can
like.
Yes.
well, they came up to me, both of them. They're like, can we talk to you? And I was like, what? What is that? Yeah,
Wow.
and they're like, so we're just dying. I wrote a book, I wrote a rom-com duet called Heart-Shaped Hack and White Hot Hack. And the hero's a hacker, and he's a pretty spicy, naughty hacker. It is pretty spicy. That's what they were referring to. But it was just kind of like, I mean, I mean, yes, they were maybe a little spicier than some of the other ones because again, it depends on the book. I had a hacker with boundary issues.
Mm.
He was a little bit, more romantic, I guess. And the
Researching
premise
that, researching that was probably fun.
always. Actually, sometimes I do have to Google stuff. Wait a minute. Okay, let's do that because it's choreography. Sometimes I have to, this is mortifying, but sometimes I have to pull up like a visual of where does the hand go and nothing too gross or anything, but you can't have certain things happening. Like you have to make sure that everything in the scene works for what you're trying to do. Yeah, it's weird. People do that sometimes, or they think that I'm every character. So they want to know, like, so that book you wrote, what? It's like, no, that wasn't about me, and a lot of times writers will write
Yeah.
what that's the old adage, but I don't write what I know. I tend to bring in things that I've learned or what have you, but none of my books are autobiographical.
Yeah, some authors sometimes say like this little like trait of this person is based on me, or I kind of do
Yeah.
that too. But
Yeah, I do those little things. And I use names of people I went to high school with, and then I don't tell them about it until later. And then I make a little announcement on my Facebook. And so now people that I went to high school with, which are pretty much the only people I'm connected with on Facebook. I don't use my personal Facebook at all, but I kept it for some teachers and things. But I will use a classmate's name, and that has proven to be really popular. They really like that. Like, maybe she'll use me next time. And I always make sure before the book comes out, hey, look, if you don't want your name to be used, let me know. I don't use their last name. It's just a first name, and they're not identifiable by it. But I'm like, if you don't like it, let me know.
Mhm. I was curious, what is your process between writing books? Because obviously, I'm assuming you've been engrossed in this entire process of writing this book, developing characters, then to switch over to writing a completely different book. Do you give yourself a certain amount of time? Do you have like rituals that you do? Or I'm curious what your process is.
That's an excellent question, Melissa, because that is a big part of my process. So when I get done with a book and it's done, it's turned in, it might still be going through the copy editing process, but it's done. Everything is there. We're not making any more changes. I let myself bask in that feeling of completion because writing a book is a very cerebrally arduous task. Like, it's exhausting near the end. I've all but memorized the book. I can't see typos anymore because my brain sees the words as they are correct. And I'm just overwhelmed and I'm just done. And that's the point in time where I think to myself, my God, I cannot do this again. I just cannot do this again. And then a little idea comes along, and then I'm like, well, I might do it again. Let's see. And then I just start that process again where I let the idea get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if it doesn't, then it goes away. And then if it does get bigger and bigger and it stays, then I use that as a springboard and I start working on that zero vomit draft and let my mind wander and figure out if it's going to be a heist book that turns into a geocaching, tale. So I do that. I just do it each time. And I do give myself adequate time to rest. And it can be 2 or 3 months. I'll read everything. I'll consume all the Netflix and all the movies that everybody's been telling me about. Because when I'm really in the zone, I kind of start blocking out everything else. Not at the beginning of a book, but when I get to the point where I'm really in the thick of it, I have to start separating out and limiting exposure to other things because I am now locked into this world. So I go on walks. I go out for lunch. I kind of just do that and then I gear up again and then the process. So it's very much a life cycle of a book. And that's pretty much what I do every time, kind of shake out the cobwebs. And then I immediately forget everything about the book that just came out.
Wow.
Like, if you ask me some questions about the Trail of Lost Hearts right now, I might be like, hold on a minute. Because I turned that book in December of 22 is when I turned that book in. And then it came out in March of 24. So, it takes a while. It's a long process.
Do you go somewhere to get ideas, or do you keep track of them if they come in while you're writing another novel, or how do you
Yeah,
make the
I
ideas
use
come?
my notes app on my phone. And I use my notes app a lot on my zero draft. So when I'm in that zero draft, I'm letting my mind wander. Even after I've determined that I'm going to start a new book and this is the one, I'm still doing some of those walks. I'll take drives and I'll let my mind wander. And then things will start popping into it. And I get that notes app out and I immediately start dictating. So if I get an idea of something, and I have like an ideas folder. So if I'm out and about and an idea comes to me, I capture it on the note, I email it to myself, and then I take that email and put it in a Gmail folder so that I can always, and it's just an ideas folder. So, and I have the most bonkers things. One time I emailed something to myself, and the next day I had a glass of wine when I did it. And I had looked at it the next day and I'm like, I don't know what that even means. I don't even know what I meant. And I think it was good too. And I was so sad. And it was one glass of wine. I was like, oh, because sometimes just one drink will kind of just, relax me. And then my brain kind of relaxes and stuff goes into it. Well, then I don't know what I was a specific sentence and I couldn't parse it the next day. And it's not because I was so drunk. It's just because it was probably just a little creative blip that came in and I thought I captured it and I didn't. But for the most part, I do. And so I have more ideas for more books than I'll ever be able to write.
I have one more question about the Trail of Lost Hearts that I didn't ask. Where
Sure.
did the idea of Ren's belief that the universe will provide what you need if you pay attention come from? And is this something you believe in? Because
It
if
is.
particularly with the Marshall and Ren story.
Yeah, I am definitely a big believer in, things get put in our existence or in front of us that we need to see, and we don't always realize at the time that that's what's happening. And I always tell my kids that too. I have a 22-year-old, well, she'll be 22 this month, and I have a 25-year-old. And I always tell them, I'm like, when you're grappling with something, you just have to kind of just open up to the world around you, see if there's any signal or message or something that just, listen to your gut kind of thing. And then, and of course I always say, and then come back to mom and we'll talk about it. And, but no, I just kind of liked the idea of Ren having this worldview that the universe will put things in your path or take them out that you shouldn't have, and then shatter it by everything she thought was true was wrong. So now she thinks, well, I didn't ask the universe. The universe brought me Rob, and then he died, and it was all wrong, and it was fake, and it was never real. How was that possibly what I needed? So that I wanted her to have a worldview, and then I wanted to shatter that worldview immediately and leave her. And that's part of how she needed to go on this quest to get on this trails, because she just was like, well, what am I supposed to believe in now? I thought that what I observed with my own two eyes was true, but maybe it's not always what we can observe. And she actually, the universe did put the right thing in her path. So her worldview was sort of reestablished when she met Marshall, and it did work out right. So I guess it's just really just the old adage that good things will happen, just keep the faith, do what you need to do, and it'll all work out. So kind of a passive way of thinking about life, but also something that she just, I wanted her to get to the point where she realized it's not maybe just the universe that's in charge. Maybe you are a little bit too.
She did that. She took her power back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're all faced with our life every single day, and we always have choices every single day, and we don't always know what path is right for us. And sometimes we do have to just open up ourselves to the world around us. Maybe we talk to people, maybe we talk to our friends stuff about what's going on, like Ren did, but it also could be a way of having that worldview constantly and not giving yourself free will, or not having the understanding that you still have free will. Maybe Ren was putting a little too much power and stock in that worldview, and maybe realized through the end of the story that maybe she had a little more power than she thought she did.
Does anybody in the group have any other questions or comments?
I was just gonna ask, are you reading anything now? What do you like to read for fun? Like, what would you
Oh my
pick up?
gosh.
That was my last question, so good job.
Well, so I can't read fiction when I'm writing fiction. I just can't. I can't read anything in the women's fiction, contemporary romance, contemporary fiction space. I just can't have that author voice in my head. I read memoirs like it's my job, you guys. I am such a memoir fan, and lately they've just become like my lifeline because I can't read fiction when I'm writing. And so I need something to read. And so I read memoirs all the time. I just got done reading Ina Garten's memoir because I love to cook, and it's so
Love
good.
her.
Well,
I
if you,
love her so much. I have that on my queue to get
oh,
it.
you have to bump it up because
Yeah,
it's so good. I read it 24 hours, and then I immediately called my dad and like, do you want to read, do you and Debbie want to read Ina Garten's? Because they love her too.
amazing.
I
Yeah,
read
I've heard
Henry
some of her
Winkler.
interviews and it sounds really good. Like, and things I would never expect, which I'm like, was
It's
I not paying attention? Because I followed her for so long, but I'm like I didn't know half these things that she's sharing.
She left Jeffrey for a while.
I know,
Yeah.
that was crazy.
You want to talk about a woman that knew her path?
Yeah.
That was
And
like,
a man who was willing kind of talk about wisdom and
yeah,
Marshall, like kind of the same, to be able to
absolutely.
say, okay, go
Yeah.
do your thing and then
No
come
hate to
back.
Jeffrey. No hate to Jeffrey. He
Yeah.
allowed Ina to do what she needed to do. But I absolutely loved Henry Winkler's memoir because I grew up with Happy Days.
Happy
And
Days.
oh my God, I mean the Fonz. And that
Love
book
it.
was so good. You guys, he's such a good person. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Um, this is going to be so embarrassing because I'm a Gen Xer. So clearly I'm giving you all of my embarrassing nostalgia. But
No, I love
memoir that I
Happy Days.
just love it. I just got done reading the memoirs of Melissa Gilbert and Alison Arngrim, who were Laura Ingalls Wilder and Nellie Olson on Little House on the Prairie, and they were fantastic. They were absolutely fantastic. I loved Nellie. Nellie was just the ultimate mean girl villain. And her memoir was great. Melissa Gilbert's memoir was fantastic. So I'm on a memoir kick for sure. That is
Got
what
it.
I've been reading. But I'm finishing up something I'm working on right now. I don't know if it's going to be a book or not, and I'll be upfront. It's a bit of a departure. It's a little bit lighter and female, it's a female ensemble comedy caper with a B story romance.
Wow.
All of my romances are considered B story because it's not the main focus, but it's a female ensemble comedy caper. And I don't know if it's going to work or not. It might not, but
What does
when I get
comedy
done,
caper mean?
so caper would be something like The Hangover,
Okay.
like where they caper would be, they're trying to get back before the wedding and they've got a tiger and the groom's missing.
Okay.
It's like that.
Yeah.
It's set within the framework of it's like The Amazing Race on steroids is what it's female ensemble, Amazing Race, scavenger hunt on steroids kind of thing. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I really don't, but I have already started the one after that if this one doesn't work. But once I get like a little bit of a break, I'm going to go on a big fiction binge. So is there anything that you guys think that I should read, like that you are loving that I should read? Like, what are your favorites?
My
What is your
favorite book that I just read was The Women.
Yes, I was about to
Yes.
say it.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my
I
God.
mean, it was fantastic, like fantastic.
Yes.
I've been on a
Love
historical
her.
fiction kick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
love
She
the
is
Lady
Kristen Hanna
Towns.
is a goddess. She
Yes,
is so
fantastic. I love
Mhm.
her.
I loved
Yes.
her.
I have all of her books. She's a St. Martin's Press author as well.
Oh, cool.
One of my
Yeah.
favorites, I personally love the author. She's joined us for a few book club discussions, and this one is not a new it's release. It was one of her first ones, is Chanel Clayton's Next Year in Havana. Sorry, When We Left Cuba First is amazing.
Yes. Yes. She
I've read
writes
them all.
fantastic historical fiction. I mean, just
Yeah.
fantastic.
Her
Yeah,
last
it's on
one was a
TBR.
little different.
I haven't
Did you
read
guys
it.
read The House on Biscayne Bay?
I have it, but I haven't read it yet.
Different
It's
good?
almost
I mean,
like
just different
no,
bad?
it's good. It's just
Okay, good.
different because
I just
it's more
started
like
that
of a
one.
mystery. It's like it has the historical fiction and very Miami and Biscayne back in the day, but it also has this like a murder mystery
Oh, that sounds
like in it.
good.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good. I liked it.
I bet the scenery and everything is really cool too. I mean, just
Really cool.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah. So do you guys mostly read? Do you read mostly women's fiction, historical fiction? Do you read a little of everything or?
I try to mix it up between women's fiction, some mysteries, not really like big thrillers, but mysteries, yes, historical fiction. I try to always do a female author is what I
Mhm.
do, and like a strong female character in the novel.
I love that, Michelle. That's how I would choose books if I had a book club too. That's exactly how I would do
But
it.
genres, I mean, other than memoirs, because I don't know if like everyone would be interested in like a particular person.
Yeah.
So other than memoirs, we pretty much try to rotate them.
Mhm. And how many people did you say overall you have in the book club?
We have that come regularly, like 10 that come in and out.
Uh-huh.
There's 130 people that get our emails though.
Wow.
And in the beginning, like during the pandemic, that came to the discussions was like between 20 and 30 people.
Mm-hmm. That sounds fantastic. You guys sound like you have a really good group.
As life has gotten back to like a little more chaotic, there's like 10 to 12 solid people that like you'll have these 6 this time and maybe 3 different ones the next time, just depending on the date.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate so much. Michelle and I were talking briefly before everyone else joined us that evenings can sometimes get away from us when there's a Zoom and things. And I've been guilty of that myself where I was like, oh, I wanted to do that, but I just didn't end up. Oh, puppy. I'm surprised my cats haven't joined me. I have 2 cats and they were all in my lap. They were both trying to get in my lap. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to tell everybody those are my cats, but I think they left. I don't
This
know.
one's tiny and She's a puppy and she has to be on top of me. And she was sleeping, but now she woke up, so she's trying to get my attention.
Oh, was she on your lap the whole time?
She was next to me the whole time.
Oh, I love that. I love
cute.
animals so much, and my cat Benny is always right at right between my ankles when I'm writing. That's his spot. He just makes his
Oh.
little nest there, and then I just write on my couch. So he's on the ottoman. He's just kind of there with me, but that makes it so much nicer. You can have a little furry friend with you. Oh, look at him.
Hi, cutie.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so adorable. So
Um,
adorable.
before we go, can we take a group photo with our, oh, well, I think you wanted to talk about your hats.
Well, I was just going to show you. I've had 2 people so far make me hats, and I thought
Oh, I
that
like
was
the cover.
That
look
is
at that.
perfect.
Somebody made
Awesome.
that?
Oh, that's so
That looks
cute.
That's so
amazing.
good.
This one is a really good match.
That one's
Jan at the
great.
library made this one, and the colors aren't quite the same. This one
That
is,
one is spot
Good.
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's
I don't look
excellent.
good in hats, but
Oh, I
Let me
love
put it for the
it.
picture. I
It's
love it.
awesome.
That is cute. That is cute.
That is so awesome.
That is adorable.
I was at a book signing, and one of the gals in the audience was like, you should have somebody knit you a hat or crochet you a hat." And I was like, "Yeah, that would be awesome. I don't know how to do that." And then she said, "Well, I am the receptionist at a assisted living facility, and I think we have some residents there. I'll ask if anybody if they're able to do something for you." And then she
Wow.
she
Wow.
contacted
Awesome.
my sister. It was actually a friend of my sister's, and my sister, I have a twin sister, Trish, and she's like,
Oh,
"Tracy, Marianne, somebody made you this hat, crocheted you this hat."
that
And
is
so
That's
so
I went in
amazing.
and I brought a signed copy of the book for the woman who had done it, and
Oh,
she
Oh,
read
that's
it.
so nice.
And she wrote me on my Facebook, and she's like, "I loved the book." And I
oh,
was
that's
just like, "Well, this
oh.
is just a full circle, wonderful moment."
that is
Mm.
adorable. And
That is
you
awesome.
mentioned you
I
have a
just
twin
loved it.
sister?
Pardon me?
You said you have a twin sister? That's
I
pretty
do.
cool.
I have a twin sister named Trish.
Does she get mistaken for you and get accolades for your writing?
We are fraternal, so
Oh, okay.
I look, this is embarrassing. I think I resemble my brother more than I resemble my
Oh,
sister. 'Cause my brother and I look like our dad, and my sister looks like our mom. So, no, we don't look alike at all, but,
funny.
there is the book that I've just started writing does have a twin relationship in it, and I've been wanting to do that for a long time. So
Mm.
Oh, that's
there will
cool.
be twins in that one.
Oh, that's nice.
Uh,
Before we take our photo, I don't want to keep you too much, but I wanted to ask the group, because this book was so phenomenal and like the female characters were so strong. What was your takeaway from the book? If anybody wants to chime in. Anyone?
Put us
For
on the
me, it
spot.
was just like I mean, I think there was a lot of things to take away, but what I loved about it was her agency that she had, right? The fact that she went through something really horrible that, anybody can go through something like that or
yeah.
similar, and that, she was upset and that, then she was able to kind of figure out how to pivot or at least how to
Mhm.
shake things up for herself so that she can hopefully turn the page and then had to like face this very important part, which was
Yeah.
having a child, right? And the fact that
Alone.
she just her
Yeah.
agency it
Mhm.
continued to grow through the book. I love that part. That was my favorite part, just like
You.
her having
Yeah.
agency over her own life and good or bad, but she was gonna figure it out in her own time and while going through it, right? Like
Yep.
it never showed her skipping over parts. Like she went
No.
through it, and that's how she was able to get to the other side. And I just think that's an important lesson.
Thank you so much. Like Ren said, the only way out
Same.
is through.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
agree with her. I like how she evolved and she learned from her past. So she went from being in a relationship where she didn't really ask questions, she didn't push the issues. And you saw her character and how she evolved and she started saying, "Okay, no, this is not what I want. I'm
Mhm.
seeing this man that's showing me that there's men out there that do care and show how
Yep.
they care, and I should, ask for what I want." And seeing how strong she became and learning from it, and the same with Marshall, how he also evolved And he
Mhm.
showed her, even, he found a way through email to really show his vulnerability and
Yep.
tell her what's going on. And he found that way too. So how they both learned from it. I really liked.
Thank you, Christy, because that is important to me. Even though the heroine, is going to get more of my attention because, her story is the one that's more important to me, the hero still has to have his own arc and it has to complete and it has to make sense and it has to complement hers. And that character development of Ren finding her agency, female agency is very important to me, especially in my heroines. I want my heroines, even if they don't have that agency at the beginning, I want them to get it. And I want them to get it by understanding what's important to them. You know, how do I do what I want to do? How do I get the ability to have the power to make the changes and to make the choices that I want in my life and to not let anybody else make those for me and to stay true to myself. And so the framework of the story allowed me, I think, to do that with Ren and Marshall because of the premise that I chose, which goes back to that whole how do I choose the idea and how do I start outlining it to tell the story that I want to tell. Um, the hard part is that sometimes you get to the end and you realize, well, maybe I could have done that a little bit better and I could have done that a little bit differently. But by this time, you've got this document that's, if you start pulling threads, then you might, you just, sometimes you just have to be like, okay, well, I did my best and I think this is how it's going to be. But you've made me feel good that Ren's journey made sense to you and was something that you liked about the book. Beautiful.
Yeah. I got the acceptance of them accepting each other for who they are now. You
Mhm.
know, when Marshall comes out and says, "Look, this is the way I'm going to be," I lost someone. I'm going to be protective of you. I'm going to be scared that I'm going to lose you. And this is something that you're going to have to like
Mhm.
live with and understand that that's the way I'm going to be.
Yep.
So I thought her accepting that, and then him obviously accepting her as the mother, and that's who's important and that's who's going to be first. So I thought it
Yes.
was, yeah.
Thank you. That is important to point out because everybody had their own journey. And sometimes the character journeys they don't, Ren found out some things about herself and then Marshall had to find out some things about himself, and then she had to find out some things. So that's why sometimes those plot points have to play out as they play out and not, you have to really watch the timing and where you put them so that they don't come too soon or too late. One of the things that I was saying when I was on tour for the book was that it was really important to me that both Marshall and Ren's arcs completed individually so that their relationship together would feel earned. Like that neither of them were perfect. They both maybe didn't handle things the way they could have or should have, but at the end of the day, all of those things ended up with two people whose journey might not have been perfect, but the destination is exactly what they both needed.
Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Can we take our photos?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me set this up.
Oh, I love that. Wait, maybe I should hold something. I'm not putting the hat on because I look dumb, but
You look cute with it. Okay.
oh, thanks.
I'm gonna take one more just in case.
Okay.
One, two, three. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you, Tracey, for taking the time to speak with us today. It was a wonderful discussion. And
Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
all welcome. You guys are so sweet. I could just sit here and listen to your questions and look at your cute faces and talk all night. So thank you. Not every book club is as fantastic as this one. So
thank you.
Oh, thank you.
this is an awesome night.
Before
Thank you
everybody goes,
again.
I wanted to share our next book.
Yeah.
I had asked on our Instagram if anybody wanted to do a holiday book because we'll be discussing this next one in early January.
Uh-huh.
Nobody wanted a holiday book. So Some people had suggested
No.
books that were on my TBR for us for in the future for next year, but I picked it for now. We'll be doing What Does It Feel Like by Sophie Kinsella.
What does it feel like?
We kind of
I
mentioned
love
it
her.
when we all read The Burnout
Oh,
a few months ago. This is the
Mhm.
book that is she says is the most biographical. It's about a novelist who gets a tumor and wakes up in a hospital bed after they remove the tumor, and like she doesn't remember anything and she has to learn how to like talk and walk and write and stuff again. Um, but from the synopsis, it's also about love and like finding like true meaning in life. And it's a short book. So if you still want to read a holiday book on your own, it's only 144 pages. So you'll have time.
well, you know that she has cancer, right?
Yes.
I mean, Sophie does.
Yes. We were trying to
Okay.
get her to talk with us and she wasn't answering. And then a few months later that came out. I was like, well, that made a lot of sense why it wasn't responsive. So this is why
Yeah.
it's the most autobiographical one, I guess. I mean, I'm so
Yeah.
happy that she's still writing after everything she went through because I love her.
Well, she has glioblastoma.
Yeah, it's
I,
serious.
Oh,
yeah, I am really worried. I mean, I don't know if I can read that
oh,
book. I don't know if I
oh,
can.
I was about to ask you if you read it.
no.
I love her. And when I saw that she had glioblastoma, I, I'm devastated. I don't know. And I haven't seen how things are going, but
She's been posting on her Instagram and she posted like about her diagnosis and she's being pretty open with it. Obviously
see.
not while she was going through it, but
Hmm.
it
Okay,
makes
good. I don't follow her on Instagram, and I haven't been on Instagram hardly in months because I've just been in the writing cave, and my social media ebbs and flows with my releases. But you're giving me some hope here, because I when I first read that, I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I saw that she had the book, which it's part memoir, right? And part, I mean, it's a
I don't think it's based completely on her, but I think it's inspired by what she went through. In the synopsis, it says it is the one that she considers the most biographical. So I don't think it's exactly, but I'm sure it relates a little bit. Uh,
yeah.
we all read The Burnout by her over the summer, which was fantastic and
I
a
loved
fun
it.
read.
That's on my TBR. I have huge mad respect for Sophie for even wanting to write anything that even halfway touches on what she's experiencing. As a novelist, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine being like, yeah, I'm going to keep writing. I kudos to her, and now you're making me want to be brave, and I think I'll just download the book. And
You can join us for book club if you'd like.
well,
Yes.
when is it again?
It would be
January?
in January after the first week sometime. We haven't set a date yet, but the second or third
If
week.
if I can get it read in time, because I have a little bit of work done on the book that I'm just finishing, and until I know where I'm at on that, I don't get to jump into my fiction binge. But I might sneak that one in anyway. I really, really love her. Some of her earlier work is there are my all-time favorite books. I mean, she's just amazing.
Like who I
So
read in college.
yeah, that's it. Well, back in the day, when I was reading Sophie Kinsella, that's when I would get my books at Target. I would get my books in the trade paperback aisle at Target when I would be there with my children, because there was no Amazon, there was no Kindle, there was nothing. That's where I bought books, was at Target. And Sophie Kinsella and Jennifer Weiner and just Jane Green. I remember all of those. I can
Giffen.
still see those. Pardon me?
And Emily Giffen.
Emily Giffen, all of them, every one of those authors that was pre social media, those were my faves. I mean, Emily Giffen was like my favorite author, and Weiner, those were my
Yeah.
favorite authors for years and years and years. Sophie Kinsella, Jane Green, um, there were a couple other ones, but like during the chick lit phase and
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Emily Giffen was
Awesome.
actually the first author we had on the book club here with us.
really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've never met her in
Oh,
person. I really hope I get to someday.
she was really nice on
I
Zoom.
bet. Oh, that sounds so fun. Who else have you guys had?
We didn't get to record her though. They didn't allow it. We kind of won for her to come talk to us.
Yeah.
So hers is not recorded on our thing, but Chanel Cleaton has come 2 or 3 times. Um, we had Nikki, uh, what is her last name now? The author of The Measure.
Oh, I have
Oh, the
that.
measure.
Yes. Oh
That
my
was
gosh.
interesting.
Well, don't spoil it because I haven't finished it yet
Oh,
because
it's so good.
I can't wait. Yeah, I do this thing where I'm not really supposed to be reading fiction because I'm in the process, but then I do this thing where I read like the first 20 pages. The first 20 pages have been read by me of probably 20 books in my condo right now. And I'm going to go back to them, but The Measure, I cannot wait. Okay,
Yeah.
It
yeah.
was really good. We've had
We
Kate
had
White.
Marion Kamali. Is that how you pronounce her name? Didn't
Yeah,
we have her come?
yeah,
Who
she's
was that?
The
the author
stationery shop.
of The Stationery Shop.
Oh, I love
I
that
don't know
book.
that
That
one.
was
Sounds
a
good.
great book.
Historical fiction. It was really nice. It was really pretty.
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of, you know what? I
It
need
was
to
like
up
in
my
Iran,
historical
right?
fiction.
Like Iranian?
Yeah, it's based on Iranian history.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be a good
It
one.
was
I need to get some
interesting.
historical fiction out of my TBR for sure.
Lady Tan's Circle of Women was great.
Have
We
you
had
heard
Those
Kate
wonderful.
White.
Kate White came too?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Um, who else did we have? Hannah Horns.
Hannah
Oh,
Horns. She's
Ornstein?
um
uh, is
Oh,
it
I'm thinking of a
maybe?
different one.
she's kind of Hannah Oren, sorry. Um, her book was I have like the cover in my head.
Trying to
She's
figure
based in
out
New York,
Was
that's
it
I
like
think, but I forget the book.
Um, oh, I'm sorry, I said her last name wrong. Hannah Orenstein,
yes,
Meant to Be
Hannah
I have
Mine.
that on my
Ornstein?
shelf. I have
Yeah.
her on my
Yeah,
shelf, and I can't reach for it right now because I can't reach that high. Yes, I blurbed one of her books. She's adorable.
yeah, she was very
I
nice.
really like her. Yeah. Well, you guys have a really nice eclectic mix of genres and everything. You've just got a
Thank
lovely
you.
little club.
Thank you. The authors don't
Thank
always
you.
come, but we still read their books, but when they come, it's a special treat.
Yeah, I'll always come.
Thank you. We would love to
Awesome.
have you again. You've been
Thank you.
No,
Thank
thank
you.
you. You guys are just lovely. You've just been made for a lovely evening, and I appreciate it so much. And just knowing
Wonderful.
that the book spoke to you and that you enjoyed it so much is music to my ears. It really, really is.
I loved it. I loved like how strong she
Wonderful.
was
Me
and
too.
didn't put up with anyone's
You.
crap, basically.
No, she's not. She might not be perfect and she might have made some mistakes, but she's taking it
I
back.
have
That's
it.
what
She's
made
Yeah.
taking
it
back her
real,
life.
though. That's what made it real.
Yeah.
Awesome.
For everyone on here, I'll be sending out we have a Christmas holiday book club book exchange, and I'll
Mhm.
share info with that within like a week or two.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you
Perfect.
so
Thank you
much,
again,
All
Michelle.
Tracy.
right,
Bye,
bye.
You're
Thank you so
ladies.
much,
amazing.
Have
Tracy.
a good
Thank
night.
Have a
you. Have a
All
great
of
good
you,
night.
you
evening.
are
It was a lot of
wonderful. Thank
fun.
you so much for having me and have a
Bye.
great
Thank
day.
you.
Well, have a great rest
You
of the
too.
evening, I guess.
You
You
too.
too.
Thanks, you too.
Night.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.